Hello everyone, welcome to Redefine Healthy Radio, episode 9, and this is a special episode because we have someone here who we are going to describe, but I want to see how Laurin's doing.
I'm good.
How's the audio over there?
The audio's good. So we've heard some feedback from you guys, and sometimes what happens is I will stand farther away from the table and I'll move around a little bit more. So then it'll sound like I'm in a totally different room, whereas Paul is right in front of the microphone. So I'm trying my best this time to do that, and I'm wearing the headphones.
She's very animated by nature. So yeah, we listen to your guys' feedback, and so our goal is basically to make this, just easy to listen to. And one thing that we both like in our podcast is high quality of audio. So that's what we're working on. So making Laurin wear the headphones today so she can hear herself. But we have a very special guest today in town. We had a Pro Physique camp this weekend. And so I reached out to a bunch of people a few months back and asked who would be involved. And I don't want to say to my surprise, but much to my delight, Dr. Joe Klemczewski agreed very rapidly, as a matter of fact. So what I think we should do, because
Dr. Joe has a very diverse background, which we do not want to do any injustice to. So we want him to explain kind of where, what he's done and how you've transitioned into all your different degrees and paths of business.
Yeah, for those, it's hard to explain just how much Dr. Joe has done, but I feel like a lot of people just aren't familiar with him. Like when I say Dr. Joe and someone's like, "Who's that?" It's like I cringe, everyone should know who you are. So for our listeners, hopefully there's, most people know who you are, but for those that don't, let's just start from scratch. Let's get into your background before you were Dr. Joe and you were just a kid wanting to lift some weights, and let's just take it from there.
Sweet. Well, I'm kind of a pacer too, so it's going to be hard for me to be chained to this microphone here, but I think it's easier probably to ask a question, just, not who is Dr. Joe, but,
right.
What is Dr. Joe, because I think for me, it's kind of just the human story of all of us, which is, a kid, as you said, Paul, where I'm just, growing up doing my thing. And I think at a very early age, I just hit a stride where I decided I don't care that much about the conventional things of life.
Right.
I just want to pursue fun things, or I want to be an explorer. I kind of consider myself now, looking back at my life, as more of just that, just somebody who's out there always looking at what's over the next hill. So for me, education kind of became that. But you wanted to start way back as a kid, like lifting weights.
I think, Laurin and I kind of did our origin stories about how we even got into the gym, because ultimately that's really what led you to pursue all your degrees.
Right. Okay, well, part of it was as a, kind of a chubby little kid, very inactive. I came from a family who didn't really necessarily value health that much, so I just woke up one day in the 4th or 5th grade and started looking around at other people. I guess kind of pre-puberty gets you thinking in that direction. And I thought, wow, this is just not cool. I don't look like that guy. I'm not going to attract the girls if I look like me. So along the same time, I had actually switched schools, and a guy befriended me. This was in the 5th grade, and again, being just a very inactive kid, it was a surprise to me that this guy said, "Hey man, how about you be on my team at recess? We're gonna play kickball, and hey, why don't you come up for the basketball team and the football team and the baseball team?" So I really got excited because I had a connection with that world. So at 12 years old, I started lifting weights aggressively, and I became very, very almost aggressive, or maybe I should say compulsive in my pursuit. Something, I still have a trait these days. If I get into something, I'm going all the way.
Did you get some bodybuilding magazines?
Yeah, by the time I was 12 years old, I was already a subscriber to Muscle and Fitness and Flex Magazine, and I was in it deep.
Yeah.
So, and that turned into, in high school, turning just that personal development into baseball. It turned into, we had at our high school back then a class called bodybuilding, co-ed bodybuilding and fitness, where you would lift weights 3 times a week.
That's awesome.
It was very early, right? I mean, this is back in the 80s, and so yeah, I was, in a structured training program, and I would lift weights at school, and then I would go home and lift weights again. I was training twice a day, every day, just
2 days, Bulgarian style.
There you go. So that got me motivated going in that direction, and then by the time I got into college through the Air Force first, I went in the military, did some school there and came back out, And now with baseball behind me, I really just had training. So I still had that startup mindset of bodybuilding and so forth because of the magazines and all that. So I made some goals of competing, turning pro and all that stuff. You know, looking back, it was probably just childhood dreams, but, you know, I did it.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's one thing that probably gets downplayed is that you did earn professional status as a natural bodybuilder, competed as a natural pro. It's like the least of all of your accomplishments. So at what point in your training and getting involved and getting it, you know, kind of addicted to the lifestyle did you go, I want to learn more about this in more like detail?
So once I got home from the Air Force and was in school on a more full-time basis, I had continued in my original pursuit of marketing, business administration, management, and I just thought I was heading down that track. And then as I got more personally invested in fitness, I just thought, man, there is no way I can live this life. Like, I don't know what I thought it would be like, you know, the kind of cubicle thing, but I just said I cannot do this. So I started asking some people, you know, what are options? Exercise science didn't exist back then. Exercise physiology just really wasn't. It was a little bit too pre that era. So what was hot at the time was physical therapy. And so a friend of mine said, that's what you really should do. And I thought, okay, that sounds really, really cool. So I kind of went to a hospital and shadowed the physical therapy department. Then I got a job as an aide and started doing all the prereqs to that and made the switch to change to physical therapy. And I graduated, got a job in doing primarily orthopedic physical therapy, and I thought that was going to be my life. I thought it was amazing. This is super, but I still kind of had that education bug, and I just, you know.
How old were you at this point?
At 24.
Okay.
And so I got out of, you know, physical therapy school, and I immediately went into getting my CSCS, and I was kind of clamoring for what's next, and I ended up doing a master's and doctorate in nutrition. Just because at that time I was really consumed with my own personal bodybuilding development. Okay. So never considered even that being a career. There was nothing like that in place. It was just for me to learn more about what could make me better in my potential bodybuilding career.
So while you were competing as a bodybuilder, because this happened to me, is this when you started getting approached by people like, hey, could you help me out? I'm interested in doing what you do.
No question.
Okay. So when did the dots connect from physical therapist, competitive bodybuilder, to I can coach people to be bodybuilders or competitive?
Yeah, there's a little bit of a bridge in the fact that even when I was in physical therapy school, I was competing, and so I would be in the gym, and you would get those questions, hey, can you help me? What do you do? That kind of thing. So once I graduated and was kind of settled, you know, I was married at the time, we had our first child, bought our first house, and I had my real job. You know, my big boy job now is in physical therapy, and I'm doing that. But then I thought, you know, I got all these people asking me questions, maybe I could at least help them out and do some programming. So without even really doing it as a business, I just kind of set aside my Saturdays to create some programming, have people over to my home gym, and help them out. And then
that's awesome.
And then I decided, you know, I mean, people really love this. And then there was a point in time where a guy in Evansville, Indiana, who was a personal trainer, and this is like saying, you know, you guys didn't exist before the internet existed, that kind of thing.
Right.
But back then, personal training was not an occupation. There were no personal trainers in gyms.
What, early 80s?
It just didn't exist. It was kind of the late 80s,
okay.
You know, maybe around 90.
It's probably when it started taking off then?
Right. So this guy, I was in the northern part of Indiana, you know, Warsaw, South Bend area, and this guy in Evans, I went to a show. I went down to a show. I won my first amateur type show, and he was a judge, and he was a personal trainer. And I said, well, what's that? What do you do? And he explained it to me, and I said, you really just like help people work out and they pay you? And I thought that was pretty amazing.
Yeah.
And so once I finished my first doctorate in nutrition, I also won
so
my pro card.
you're just brazen through the degree. So you're a doctorate of physical therapy.
Well, at that point, you didn't have to have a DPT.
Okay.
You could have a bachelor's or a master's, and so yeah, I had just gone to the.
And then now you just like, oh, by the way, I just got my master's in nutrition or my PhD in nutrition.
Right.
Okay, so we can keep going. Just want to.
Well, I mean, that was, you know, I was...
Degree tally.
Yeah.
I only had one kid at the
Have a
time,
little
a newborn.
ding every time he says it.
It was... it was just kind of easy, right? I mean, there just wasn't a lot going on in my life at the time. It was pretty subtle.
You're married with a child and a career and a bodybuilding hobby, but not a lot going on in your life.
Wow, I mean, that doesn't seem like a lot to me now.
Yeah, well, I think maybe that speaks to, like, you know, the generation, like your upbringing, but some people are like, they go to work for 8 hours and like, woo, that's enough. I'm done. I can't be expected to go make food and train. So
I created some habits. So, you know, when my wife would go to bed at 10 o'clock at night, you know, that's when I would study more, and I would study 2 or 3 hours at night.
Sounds familiar.
And then at lunch, you know, I would be, you know, doing homework and stuff like that. And so, yeah, I just got it.
It never occurred to you to just, like, watch, like, the Cosby Show and...
Yeah. We should talk about Bill Cosby now, huh?
No, that's not.
Go in that direction.
I'm just trying to think of TV shows that were on when you and I were growing up. You know, like...
Paul picks the worst one.
Good example, Paul.
Well, whatever. Maybe you were a Buffalo Bills fan. You liked O.J. Simpson. Maybe...
Oh, nice. Yeah, we'll go there. Just throw them all in there.
Okay, so you just got through this nutrition, and there's a part of the story that I'm trying to get to because it's very, like, bold. It's very, like, in my memory. I remember when you told me the story. So you were now a personal trainer?
Well, this friend of mine, interestingly, kind of brokered a deal because he was in Evansville, and he was the manager of a nice private small gym. Really, really great place if you wanted a small gym. Because as he was the first personal trainer in the entire state and maybe region, everybody who really wanted that service, you know, came to him. So he was really building a nice little, you know, practice. And his wife was getting transferred to another part of the country, and the guy who actually owned the gym owned the building. He was a real estate developer. He put this gym in there just to be kind of a nice service to his you know, tenants.
Yeah.
And so my friend said, "Hey, Joe, why don't you buy this from him?" And I said, "Okay." So I packed up my family and moved across the state and left my physical therapy career, which was a dumb, impulsive move. It was a rough couple of years because I just thought, you know, it would be easy.
Yeah.
And I learned running a business is not easy. So without knowing I was going to do this, I effectively cut my income in half for a couple of years. My wife and I were sleeping on a cement slab in an apartment because we couldn't even afford a bed frame. I actually had to get a part-time physical therapy job just to pay for my own business, keep the doors open. So I learned quickly that running a business takes more than just a hope and a dream. And so I had to kind of grind out 2 or 3 years to build that, and then we started adding staff, and I started gelling together nutrition programming as well as personal training and learning how to own a business, and then we went, you know, onward from there.
So the point of the story that I really want to get to is where you basically became the first, I don't want to say online because it wasn't an online thing, but it would be a not local coach. Like people would actually hire you that did not live in Evansville.
Gotcha.
So tell us the story of like how that started because I just find it very interesting.
Okay. And if I don't get the points in that you're searching for, yeah, definitely hook me back in. But during this time, I'm running the gym. Things are going great. We're doing nutrition programming. I'm still continuing my career as a professional bodybuilder. And along the way, I'm also helping other people because I'm very inquisitive. I'm curious. I'm asking people, how do you do this? How do you look so good? And I'm just kind of sinking my teeth into the entire culture.
Just assimilating information.
Right. And I'm writing for Natural Bodybuilding Fitness Magazine and even Muscle Media, Muscular Development. I'm getting into that whole side of the industry. And at one point, I had started a sports supplement company. And it was going extremely well. We were in all 50 states almost instantly. We were doing over $1 million a year almost instantly. And
casual side project.
Remember when he said, like, you know, I had nothing going on. Right. Now he has a supplement company that's doing well. Like, it kills me.
But that crashed and burned too, so you got to be careful. Okay. You know, you can't have your hands in too many things. That's another really long story. But I was trading at this point articles for ad space for different things, and it's primarily our supplement company. And when we closed our supplement company down, there was one particular weekend that really defines this change in my life. So on a Friday, we had to decide that it's over, the game is over, we're shutting down our supplement company. The editor of the magazine emailed and said, "Hey, Joe, I need your ad for Monday." And I no longer had a company to advertise. So over the weekend, I thought, what can I advertise?
Yeah.
And
what do I have to sell?
There's a lot going on. I don't even know how I'm going to feed my family the next week because
Right.
we're shutting down this company, and there's a lot of turmoil. And so I just thought, well, I've been helping people, friends with nutrition, helping them do well. I thought maybe somebody would pay for this service. So by Monday, I had my ad designer just create this little ad called Dr. Joe's Perfect Peaking. And I was like $300. Like, you can hire me to coach you for a bodybuilding show. I had no idea if anybody would even do this. And of course, people started doing that. And here we are 15, 20 years later, it's an entire industry.
Yeah, and that's
what was the time frame on this? Because I think it's important for people to...
That was in 2001. 2001.
Wow. 2001, you put an ad in a natural bodybuilding magazine with pretty minimal circulation, but super specific. The people that read that magazine probably have done shows or interested in shows.
It's like the target audience.
And they probably made mistakes
and I had been
done
writing,
the typical stuff.
And I've been writing for years in that magazine about nutrition and peaking. So there was kind of a built-in audience.
Yeah, and so, I mean, do you remember getting a phone call or something or an email at that point and thinking, oh, someone saw my ad, victory. Like, you were probably just happy to hear from one person, right?
Absolutely. It was amazing to me when those inquiries started rolling in that people will actually see it. Because I just made it up.
Right.
I just made it up. And I didn't know if people would even do it.
Made up remote coaching.
And you know how they say the mother of invention is necessity?
Yeah, absolutely.
It was just because I'm laying flat on my back with a broken company, wondering how I'm going to feed my family. And then I just had this, quasi opportunity. I had been trading the ad space and so, I was just forced to make a decision over that weekend.
Well, I mean, even at this point, you had some pretty huge failures and risks that you had taken. I think that's something like that people not that don't know you might just think, oh, Dr. Joe, he just went to school, got a bunch of degrees, started a business, and it was just smooth sailing, like linear. And I think that's one thing that, like, Laurin and I are learning as business people is that you have to take risks. You have to be willing to fail in order to succeed. And it's probably the hardest part, especially because I'm like you. I was a steady paycheck guy. One thing about Laurin, she was never a steady paycheck girl, but she's so pragmatic about how she does things. So it's like, I like seeing how she does things, and I like seeing how you've done things, and it's fun to take away from all this stuff.
I can definitely say that that's probably the scariest thing is the uncertainty of any changing something like overnight or having something completely crash and burn. That's your entire income. And at this point, you already had a family. That's a lot more important than just me, right? At this point.
And obviously, you had a supportive spouse. I mean,
spouse.
She was probably nervous, but she still believed in you.
Yeah.
Children. I mean, like all that. That completely changes everything. But it's every successful person that I've ever talked to has those kind of feelings. And I think you just, get over it.
Well, there's a point where you say, what I know now, I probably would not take those risks.
Wow.
I would not put my wife on the cement slab in an apartment for 6 months. I would not do those things where I say, oh, by the way, I just lost $1 million in the supplement company. And, oh, by the way, now we have to do this because I failed again. You just wouldn't do that if you thought it through.
Right.
But I do have a plaque in my office that says sometimes you just have to take a risk. I mean, if you're not willing to get up to bat and swing, you're never going to hit.
Yeah.
And so you have to be willing to do something at least.
Yeah. I mean, especially in a career, I mean, like for me, it was hard to do, even though I had seen you and other people be so successful in it. I can't even imagine you're like, I'm going to make this a career. And it didn't even exist. Twice with the personal training and then with the online coaching or the remote coaching. So when that starts to happen, because, this is probably about the time that I start paying attention, the early 2000s, 2005, 2006. So when I start paying attention, immediately I know about Team K. Mm-hmm. If Team K is coming to a show, they're coming to win. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about that kind of evolution from when you started and then however many businesses and degrees you got during that time too.
Who is that?
Team K.
Team Klemczewski.
Oh.
We shortened it to K so that people.
I'm like, is this another team that we're talking about? Like,
no, it's Dr. Joe's.
Oh, got it.
Like Team Pro Physique. He was Team K because Team Dr. Joe probably didn't roll off the tongue right, and Team Klemczewski.
Right. A little tougher to say.
Hey, that's a mouthful.
Yes. I'm letting that go again.
That's what she said. Come on,
No,
I set you up. I set you
I
up.
wasn't going to go there.
That was for Aaron, by the way.
All right, so at that time, once we had a few clients, or I had a few clients coming to me, we're doing this, then yes, I mean, the success was immediate because there were still a lot of stupid things being done in the industry. Everybody followed the same cookie cutter type plan. You know, the water load, water deplete, sodium load, sodium, all of that stuff.
Yeah.
That was just completely the opposite. And all the way back in my early 20s, I was already, because I was studying nutrition academically, I was coming to the conclusions that stuff was just stupid. So I was.
Did you ever use it as a peaking protocol?
Absolutely.
Just because it was dogma?
No, for myself, absolutely.
Okay.
And I was that same guy who was like, why do I look so much better the day after a show? Why do I look so flat and squishy and small the day of the show? So when I started digging into some of my physiology classes in biochemistry, it was obvious. It was totally obvious. So now I just had to have the guts to try it on a contest day, right?
Yeah,
so for the first time, you're like, oh, I think I'm going to drink water all the way up through the show. It's never been done before.
Everyone's going to stare at you and laugh at you.
Right. And all of a sudden it starts working, and I'm playing with those variables, and you could probably track the progression in my articles over those years of me. I might write an article on something that I would disagree with today, but it was a progression from those times, kind of out of the dark ages of bodybuilding. So people were winning, like you said. We would go to shows, and I was getting more clients. And every time you would go to a show, if I had the winner in every class or every overall and every pro card, obviously people are taking notice because everybody on the stage is thanking Joe, thanking Team K.
Yeah.
So it just exponentially rose to the point where that was all I could do. I mean, all I could do was coaching. So I was forced almost to put everything else aside. And I did that for a while. I sold my gym. I did everything else. And I just created the brand, the Diet Doc, in the company. Yeah. But it was still, primarily physique, bodybuilding type coaching because that was just ramping up so heavily. And then we can get into this a little bit later, but the other side of the Diet Doc, the general population, the licensing and franchising we do, that came out of just because of what I wanted to do.
Part of what's so cool about having you here is like what Laurin and I are going through with our businesses being, less than 5 years old. It's like we start to go, you start to see the pattern and changing in our own personal and business development and to where it could potentially go. And then you go, oh, Dr. Joe did that like 10 years ago, 15 years ago. So it's cool to have you here and be able to like discuss it.
Because there's only so much that you'll ever be able to do as a coach. Mm-hmm. And if you're going to be a good coach, not just have like 1,000 clients and not actually know them and check in with them.
That happens?
Yeah. Crazy, right?
There's rumors.
Yeah, we've heard about that a few times. It's so crazy to me that kind of stuff goes on still, because there are so many coaches now. And I'm like, everyone knows like that those teams do all that. So like, why do you even want to be a part of that? But regardless, that's a whole different, I guess, topic. But it's so interesting to see the progression because so quickly we've realized like there is a cap at some point, and then you are forced to either hire a new coach or hire someone underneath, whatever it may be, or do something like how you've done. So it's just the industry is so rapidly evolving. I think
it's rapidly evolving, and people's healths are not improving. Like we're still addressing something so specific that is taking place. I mean, I don't know that the obesity and the health of Americans has improved in the last 20 years, even though your business, me and Laurin have a business. Right. So it still feels like the demand is much higher than the supply right now.
Yeah, interestingly, some segments of our population are improving and some are getting worse. I think because everybody is just getting kind of sick of being sick and tired. I mean, there is a great amount of population that's improving, more information is out there. There's this nonstop PSA type content hitting us. But a lot of people kind of grow up and they have to make those mistakes and they get out of shape and all that. So I think there's definitely a lifespan that's going to live beyond us of people who just still need help.
Yeah, I think I'm excited to be a part of it because it feels like for the first time, my previous career, it was a job that I did. I liked it. I enjoyed going to work and I loved going to, with the people I worked with, but I didn't feel like I was like making a difference. So, I was fixing network stuff and stuff like that. But But this
Listen,
career,
that would make a difference for me if my internet was down.
believe me, my parents would be like, "Hey, we got a new laptop. Can you come by for dinner?" Yeah. So I was that guy. But now it's like the feeling of just having someone tell you that you've changed their life for the better. Right. That's something you can never replace. So that's where I get my enjoyment now.
And that was the transition from me kind of away from coaching. First of all, you get to a point where when you've done something for a while, and like I said, I'm the kind of guy who will just kind of exhaust it, and I'll go as far as I can, and then I get a little bored and I want to do something else. If I've done this for a while, and this was already a natural segue. I already had my gym, my kind of a small wellness company and staff. We're doing different things. And you're right, Paul, I was getting much more satisfaction from helping somebody regain a literal life than just win a trophy or a pro card or something like that. Right. So I also looked at, where do I want to be in 5, 10, 20 years? Do I want to be doing this? And my answer was an easy no. I love it. I've loved it. And I will continue to enjoy part of it. But I definitely want to do some other things. And so there was another great transition point where when I was doing a lecture at a fitness camp, somebody came up to me and said, "Oh my gosh, I have owned a gym for 20 years and I've tried to do nutrition programming and I can never get anything to work. You have to help me do what you do." And I already in the back of my mind had the idea of franchising at some point. Everything I'm creating, all this content, I already written a book, and I thought, this is something that I could do. And so when he brought that to me, just that question, it was affirming that there's a need. Maybe I could do this someday. And the guy just hounded me, and so I went and I spent the next year writing our first curriculum, doing all the legal research. How do you do this? Licensing versus franchising. Worked with an intellectual property attorney, and when we started, we had 5 program owners that flew to Evansville, Indiana. They were our charter program owners. And now, 12 or so years later, we've had over 150 people all around the world that have become Diet Doc program owners, and they have their own nutrition and wellness practices of all sorts.
And how many of those?
Are they all physical?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
A lot of them are physical locations. And one of the reasons we chose licensing instead of franchising, licensing gives you the flexibility, kind of like an independent contractor versus an employee. So if I license my program, you can be a medical doctor, a chiropractor, a personal trainer, a gym owner, or just an independent person. Take that program and use it in whatever business model you want. Okay. So it can be a brick and mortar, it can be online, if anything. We certainly know after this amount of time, what works best, and we can help our owners develop a model that's going to be sustainable and lucrative for them, where they can reach the most people. But it's been an amazing 12, probably almost 15 years doing that. But that was even a gradual transition, because you can't just, or at least I learned not to just dump one thing and jump into the other and hope you can swim. Right. So I was still doing the coaching and all of that and transitioning into this. And as this has escalated, it has become the bigger part of my company.
Yeah. So you haven't had a degree in a while. So during that time, you must have gone to school.
There had to be another one.
Good point. So a great segue, Paul. You're good at this. Good host.
Hey, it's not my first podcast.
I am episode number 9. I might get a shirt that says number 9.
See, Laurin, now he's thinking. That's what we need to do, is make sure to get a 10, 11, a 12.
Right. That's what I'm going to be. I want your radio.
Number 9. Was that Mickey Mantle?
Right.
Oh, that was 7. I'm going to get yelled at for that one. Who's 9 on the Yankees?
Was it really? Yeah, I wouldn't know. I don't go that far back in baseball.
Yeah. We're losing our audience. They don't care either.
All right.
Nobody cares, Paul.
Nobody cares. Moving on. So, we went on to a process of creating this curriculum for our owners, and I'm more excited about that. And I wanted to revamp my first book. When I wrote my first book, I knew it was just going to be self-published. It's just kind of a compilation of everything I would want my clients to have.
Hey, listen, this podcast is all about selling. So just name the book. We haven't even heard the name yet. What's this first book?
It's not even out there anymore. It's
not
even out there now.
Not even on Amazon?
But my second,
eBay?
When I went to write a new version, a second edition, this was the one I was going to try and sell. I was going to try and get a publisher. And along the way, a friend of mine, a medical doctor, said, "Man, I would love to do that with you." And I thought, well, that's really good credibility. You know, I'm the nutrition guy, and we have a medical doctor for that, so that'll help. Indeed, it did. That was what allowed us to get a publisher and move into kind of mainstream editing, publishing, and all that. And that opened my eyes to the writing world. And so once we were there and we were on tour with our book and we were working with copy editors and all that, I thought, you know, what I have as far as a clinical degree in nutrition would be probably better if I kind of rounded off the edges and I had something more in health. At the time, what are you laughing about, Paul?
Just the way your mind works.
Yeah.
You're always going forward.
So, well, a big thing for medical doctors at that time was to get an MPH. If you were a medical doctor, you just did doctor stuff. But if you had a master's in public health, you really gave a shit about health and the obesity epidemic and stuff like that. And so that's how you got on TV, that's how you got books, because you were more than just a medical doctor. So I kind of viewed myself as, okay, I'm a nutritionist.
Sure.
But I want to be like in that ball game, that MPH. So I went and I did a doctoral program in health education, which was a terminal degree, because at this point I'm thinking, well, maybe I want to teach someday in college more than just anatomy and physiology or physical therapy. So I did that thinking, you know, this will help me with writing credits, and I can go teach health and stuff like that in a university someday. So I did that.
So what degree was that one?
That was a PhD in health education.
Ding.
3.
So, in that phase,
Yeah.
you know, we were
still
just
don't know the book.
grinding it out.
Yeah, you're still not selling the book.
Well, okay, so that book was, let me think if I can remember, The Diet Doc's Guide to Permanent Weight Loss.
I think I saw, and it's probably on YouTube available somewhere,
Yeah.
like a sit-down talk show, like The View style, with some women and you just discussing
That was that
diet.
book.
Yeah.
So we were on kind of a book tour. Our publisher sent us out, and we did a lot of radio and TV for that.
Yeah. One of the earlier, well, and there's so much to talk about. I don't know if we're going to get it all in, but let's talk about,
So she said.
we kind of have to, yes, you're welcome, world. Let's talk a little bit about the term flexible dieting.
Oh.
Because it's almost a part of the vernacular now.
Mm-hmm.
IFYM, flexible dieting, it's a philosophy that a lot of people are familiar with. You basically made it popular culture. Let's tell that story, because that's a good one.
So this goes back to when I was competing, and that very first guy that kind of brokered that deal for me to buy that gym in Evansville, he was a judge for bodybuilding shows, and he helped people get ready. So he was, I wouldn't call him a bodybuilding prep coach, because he didn't do that. He basically just Xeroxed copies of Chris Aceto articles and said, here, eat this.
Okay.
And so I got a packet like that where he would say, okay, you need to have this many units of protein, this many units of carbs, or this servings, and he had this exchange list, and it was literally just copied out of like Flex magazine. And so I was living in Indianapolis. I was still going to school at the IU Med Center, and he was in Evansville at the time, and this is back before internet existed, so I would actually put my nutrition logs in the mail, like put stamps on an envelope and send them
That is
to
a
Evansville.
dedicated client.
No, that's so funny. So that was, remember I told you about that Hani Ramad interview?
Yeah.
So I don't know the timeline on this, but basically it was something kind of similar. Like he was a personal trainer in a certain area, and then he left and he moved and he was in school, and then his clients were like, hey, the new trainer isn't really like helping us like with our diet and like stuff like you used to do. Can you work with me? So he said that he would have people mail in disposable cameras. Like they'd overnight it, mail in the camera. He would go to the store, get it printed, look at it, and then send him information back.
That happened. Like the Pony Express.
So that's crazy, like sending all those things. But
the internet changed everything. So at that time, communication's tough, right? The internet didn't exist. We were not just having these conversations.
And you weren't really friends with that guy, right?
I mean, friendly. I gotten to know him. Right. So he was like just a friend helping me get ready for a show, or at least saying, here, do this. And so I got to the point where I just didn't want these foods that were on his list. It was a very small, rigid list. Eat these things. I'm like, well, I don't want to eat these things. So for carbs, I would ask him questions like, can I eat animal crackers? Because I can get a big-ass tub of animal crackers at the store, and I'm a college student, so this matters. And so, and they were, to me, they were low-fat, they were just carbs, didn't understand things about the glycemic index. I was just in physical therapy school, or just nutritional value, didn't really care. So I had these questions. At one point, you know, everything was green beans, green beans, green beans, green beans. I'm like, well, I want peas. And that was that story I've told. You know, I just wanted some peas. Why can't I have a bowl of peas? And he said, you can't. But I'm looking at the nutrition fact panel, and I can do the math. I can say, look, I can eat this many peas for this many green beans, and it's an even exchange. Yep. And even though there might be more protein in peas, I can also do the math and take a little bit of protein out of another meal. I can reduce the chicken by half an ounce or something. So I just asked him, why can't we just do that? Why can't I go by nutrition fact panel information? Protein, carbs, and fat. Why can't I do that? Yeah. And he said, you can't. You just can't.
Necessity.
That's my system doesn't work like that. So I said, okay.
My system, a.k.a. the magazine that I just bought off the shelf.
So yeah, I said, all right, thanks, but no thanks. I'm going on my own.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, if it's not sustainable,
right?
I mean, how many people have done one or two shows and then they just tell everybody, no, you can't do bodybuilding. You can't do that because I just can't eat oatmeal and tilapia for 6 months.
And at the time, you know, I was transitioning. I mean, that was for my own personal bodybuilding career. But a couple years go by, and now I'm seeing some clients in my gym, and I'm creating nutrition programming. I had already been eating in a very flexible way, and I was just macro-based dieting all the time for myself. So when I started this company, and we have a lot of clients coming in, a lot of members of our gym, and we're doing nutrition programming, of course, it was way easier for them to have some flexibility. You know, if you're going to tell somebody you can only eat these meals, it's going to fail. So I in my first book, I created, you know, a lot of different hierarchies of things. It's just behavioral thought. That my reasons in my mind, my opinion for why so many people failed at weight loss was because they just didn't have enough information, enough education. They didn't know what they were doing. They're just blindly, you know, following a plan. And the other thing was that plan was just too rigid. Right. So I instantly created my programming to include some education, not to dump it on people and make them feel like it's just overwhelming, but you needed to at least teach them what they were doing, what their goals were, why they were doing what they were doing, and you had to give them some flexibility.
Do you think... Sorry.
Go ahead.
Do you think too much flexibility is a problem as well?
That's
with
exactly what I was going to say.
With both physique and general pop, and I feel like that's a different question, but what are your thoughts on that? Because I think people have seriously taken it from that to the whole other end of the spectrum.
Of course. Well, and I say of course because you've seen the industry do this, and it did take 15 years. You know, everybody just got on the bandwagon of flexible dieting, and we have all of our different names and monikers for it. But it's still something, just like keeping water in a contest diet. There are still people who have not heard that yet, even though it's incredibly mainstream for us. I mean, I've been doing it for 20 years. You guys have been doing it for 10 or 15 years. There are still some people that have not received that memo.
Right.
So with flexible dieting, there are still people who that's very novel and that's very liberating for them. Other people who are more advanced have taken it to the point, you know, the pendulum is so far on the other side that there is just no structure. So whether it's a competitor or a general population client, some consultants and coaches are just saying, here, eat whatever you want. You know, here are some numbers, just eat that. And then there's no structure. There's no real support. And we have to have guidance. I asked you this, Paul, the other day, in kind of explaining what I have termed structured flexibility, is even you as an advanced person, you know all this stuff, you know you have all the flexibility in the world because you can do math.
Yeah.
But you have the principles of here's proper nutrition, this meets my goals better, this is why I would do this. So what's the very first thing you do when you start a diet for yourself?
I have to start creating a plan that I can follow for each day. Otherwise, it just stresses me out. I have to know, like, this is going to be my meals for the next couple days or a week.
So you immediately default to some structure. Probably a lot of structure.
Yeah, it's just impossible. Like, the stress that it creates to, like, figure out like those 2 or 3 meals at the end of the day. Yeah, no, versus just knowing, okay, this is my meal, go eat it, stop. It just, it makes it easy.
So at some points, when I would diet, I would just have a sticky note in my pocket. And if you just go through the day, this looks good for breakfast. Oh, I think I'll eat this for lunch. I think I'll eat this. And you're just randomly grabbing food. And I would track my macros. I just had protein, carbs, and fat in columns on this little note card, and I'm just doing the math. That's a horrible way to diet. Because, I mean, you're constantly just having to react, and you're looking at that thing, and how much food do I have left? And you're just reacting, instead of having a plan where with enough structure, this is going to get me through these parts of the day on cruise control. I don't have to do a lot of thinking. And then when you need flexibility, how would you guys do that? Like, you've got a great structure, but you just think of a scenario where you think, well, now I need to employ some flexibility.
Yeah.
Going out to eat is probably the number one thing.
Yeah.
And obviously making proper choices when you go out to eat is so crucial. So you can eat anywhere. I always tell people this. I did a show in Italy, and I was in Italy for 2 or 3 days beforehand, and it was eating food there. So, like, trust me, it was very difficult.
People thought she was crazy. Tell them the breakfast story.
Oh, my gosh. So over there, if anyone's been in Europe, they are huge with pastries and coffee for breakfast. Like, that is it. And I eat eggs and egg whites and all that every morning, and I typically have a large breakfast volume in that sense. And the eggs over there are amazing. They're like bright orange. Like, I have no idea why they don't eat them more. But so I was ordering, and I'd asked one of the people who spoke pretty good English, like, to write it on the note, like, no oil, like, write it this way, like, how do I get the egg whites and the eggs? And so I gave it to them, and literally it came out on 2 plates just because they cooked it separately. So I had like 2 plates in front of me and like a piece or 2 of toast. And the lady next to me was giving me the dirtiest looks. Like, you would have thought that I had like a child's head on my plate or something. And she had like this huge plate of croissants and like a coffee with a whole bunch of sugar in it. And I was just like, it's just so interesting, like the mindset over there with food. But so yeah, if I can eat there, anyone can eat anywhere. But it's all about just making proper choices when you go out to eat. And I always tell people, you're making the conscious decision to either, I'm just gonna have whatever I want tonight, or I'm going to stick to X plan.
So that's a great example of, again, structured flexibility on 2 levels.
I always say that. That is so funny.
First of all, you, even traveling in Europe, you still ate something that was very familiar to you and very sound. So even over there, I'm going to have my eggs, egg whites, that kind of thing. I'm going to stay as close to my plan as possible. But you're flexible in the fact that you can travel and do that. Like, you're comfortable ordering that, doing what you have to do, going shopping. And that's what I think all of our clients on every level need. They have to be told, here's what's best, here are sample meal plans, or here's what I would do in your situation, or here are the things you should consider, and let's create a plan. But when you need to be flexible because you're going out or because this happens, then you know how to be flexible.
Absolutely.
I think there's 2 types of people, and of course I think with competitors it's a little bit more the one type A side. And so I have some clients who I have to work on flexibility with. Like, I force it on them because they are so neurotic with how they track. And I can tell that it's having a negative impact on their life. And whereas other people, you have to sometimes rein in that flexibility because they aren't, hitting everything. They're like, oh, I just been nibbling on this and I didn't, I've been just grabbing snacks while I study or at work, at the office, or, whatever. And so you have to kind of know your client and know where to really bring in that structure or that flexibility. And so it's not just numbers. It's like this whole weird psychological thing. So it's either telling people like, hey, you need to prep your food, or like, okay, maybe you should like go out, maybe a few times this week and like try to have something that you're tracking, but it's not maybe perfect. For me, the first thing I always have to do, like at least 2 meals a day have to be prepped. It just makes it so much easier. I don't have to think about it. I don't have to worry about it. Okay, I have 2 prep meals. I'm going to have a protein shake. And then depending on where I'm at as far as like, off season or in season, I'm going to maybe have like a piece of fruit or have like, dinners up to whatever I want it to be. Breakfast is typically always the same thing. I make it at home. But that helps me so much and helps clients, I think, when I say like, hey, at least have like 2 things prepped and a protein shake. And then they're like, oh, the rest of the day is easy.
Perfect. We started creating, as we're writing our next book, I'm always thinking, how can we make this better for the consumer? How can we make it easier, etc.? And so that's exactly what we're doing, is creating a plan where they almost get to fill in those gaps. Like, here are the meals we think that should have some structure here's the kind of structure we think would work best, and then here's where you need to fill in with some flexibility.
I think for most of us that are like family work, it's going to be the evening meal, right? That's kind of the most flexible, right? Like breakfast and lunch.
You're either stealing my book idea, man.
Hey, well, I think you might have mentioned it to me the other day, so maybe it's just been maybe it's one cool thing. I don't know if you're familiar with Laurin's research. I don't know if you saw her presentation about her grad study that she did at USF, but she basically did a study between rigid dieting and flexible dieting. And what I thought was interesting that came out of it was Laurin's opinion shifted, because going into it, she was all flexible dieting.
Oh, yeah.
Well, going into it,
I don't want to put words into your mouth.
Don't try to make it sound like I was like this biased person. That's what I knew would work.
Right.
Because that's what I had seen work. Mm-hmm. I was just hoping for a result at anything.
Right.
But at the end of the day, I was like, okay, we'll learn something. I'm sure that's kind of what we're after. Mm-hmm. And I was just, the biggest takeaway, though, was I was so surprised at how well some people did on the meal plan. Mm-hmm. And now, this was not a meal plan like a bro meal plan. So I think that there's, of course, a difference, too. It wasn't 3 foods. It was, like, options. So it was a little bit more flexible of a meal plan, I guess you could say. But it was still, for all intents and purposes, rigid for people who aren't tracking their food like Nazis every day.
And, and my takeaway was what you told me about why they liked it, which was...
So basically, they got to see, like, okay, this is about how much I should be eating, about how many times a day, and I'm losing weight. Okay, so then they just carried that over afterwards. Like, this is probably an appropriate portion size, and they learned, like, some people were like, oh, now I know what's in this food. I never even looked at the label, or, you're like, what? How do you not look at this? But some people don't, and it was so interesting what I learned from that, and probably the biggest thing I learned is that not everyone, like, flexible dieting isn't for everyone at first, and then it's not, meal plan isn't for everyone at the end of their journey either. So it's like
exactly where I was going to go next was, just like the lecture I gave the other day on human complexity. We're not binary. It's just such a false dichotomy. So you could do your research and say, oh, this type of dieting is better than this, but you didn't extend it out 5 years or 10 years or that kind of thing. So another study is massive structure. If you give somebody exactly what to eat, maybe even just the food, yes, they can lose weight very, very well, but what about a year later or 6 months later? The recidivism rate for them is extremely high because they did not learn how to think. So the meal plan will work great initially, but then they will fall apart because they have no follow-through education.
You have to either do education on your own or have a coach or a consultant or watch a YouTube, whatever it is. You have to be forcing yourself to learn.
Well, that's kind of the biggest theme with any kind of a diet that has a name, is that if it's not inherently what you enjoy eating every day, you're not gonna learn anything from doing the grapefruit diet, right? And if you don't like grapefruit at the end of the diet, even though you lost 30 pounds, you're going to go back to what you enjoy.
Yeah, so we need more structure initially, but we have to have a path that teaches us how to use more flexibility as we move forward, and that's the best answer.
And it's funny, like, that's kind of where me and Laurin are now in our journeys. We're starting to see some of that stuff, and here you are 10 years ago, like, initiating education and on a greater level than just people that want to get striated glutes and win a trophy, So I think it's very exciting for me to be a part of that, and that's why when I look at, like, my arc as a coach, I love coaching. I love going to the shows. You maybe don't, but I literally love being there and being a part of it. But I also love the email from my obese client that's lost 80 pounds that says, "Thank you, I'm under 300 pounds for the first time in 30 years." Like, that gets me the same joy. Right. So I love being a part of that process as well. So it's I'm excited to see all the stuff that you're coming out with. So let's talk about your current degree, because we haven't had a degree in a while.
All right. So if we backtrack to that a little bit, I had done the doctorate in health education to help with publishing and all of that. And once again, I got really excited about just the writing world. I saw more of it. And I thought, man, the next thing I want to do, and this may be retirement, is to learn how to be an even better writer. My co-author for that middle book, he was a guy who was president of the newspaper or whatever in college and all that kind of stuff. And so he really loved this stuff. And it kind of opened my eyes to it being a real skill. So I started looking around at options, and it's a very in vogue thing or a really hot degree program is the MFA, the Masters of Fine Arts in Creative Writing. There's a lot of low residency type programs, so I checked all these out, and I ended up going to Connecticut, where I could go for 1 week every semester, where it's a very intensive, workshop week. You meet all your professors and peers and all that, and then the rest of it's just doing all of your work online and through virtual Blackboard, that kind of thing, Canvas. And so I spent 4 years doing a master's in creative and professional writing, and I ended up. It was 4 years. Lauren's eyes are bugging out. It was like a 2-year program, but you could go part-time.
Oh, okay. I was like,
that was
never heard of that.
That was one of the virtues of that program.
Okay.
More like an adult education program.
Yeah. I could take 2 classes at a time. I mean, we had people who had just graduated with a bachelor's in journalism or something, and now they're doing their masters in professional writing. We had 60-year-old school teachers who wanted that MFA because they wanted to get a raise. I mean, it's just. It's an amazing program, and at Western Connecticut State University, where I went, just some of the best people I've ever met, most intelligent, amazing people. So I ended up kind of changing from thinking I was going to go do fiction. I just wanted to do this for fun, and I met a lot of nonfiction writers, some phenomenal people who are writing creative nonfiction and journalism, and that totally flipped me back, because I thought, this is what I do already. I write for magazines, I'm writing books, and I just want to be able to write better so I can still pick up the fiction skills and the poetry skills, all the things I'm interested in, but my main genre is going to be creative nonfiction. And I ended up going down a social psychology or personality psychology route for, I had to write an entire book as a thesis. So I did that in developmental and personality psychology. What are you laughing about?
Another casual book.
You just wrote a book.
Right. So that got me really pumped up about the whole social psychology and social science world, and I started immediately writing a very long-term project. And as I'm doing this, I thought, man, back when I did that master's degree in writing, it was amazing to have all of these professors kind of working with me through this project, looking at it, helping me. So if I'm going to do something in the social science world, I would love to have that same kind of input. So I just a couple years ago started a master's of social psychology and anthropology. And
you haven't completed that one yet, so no ding.
I'm still doing it.
But I didn't get the ding for the master's in fine arts and creative writing.
Right.
Ding. All right.
Okay. Yeah, this one's going to take a little bit longer because I'm really digging into some deep stuff.
Well, and it's is it through Harvard? Is that what you're talking about?
It is. Yeah, it's a social psych anthropology through
Casual.
Harvard.
Yeah.
The workload there is no joke. I will admit that was I took on a big challenge for this one.
Yeah. Well, one of the great things, like whenever spending time with you, is you're so unassuming. You don't really play up that you've got.
That's a good word.
Yeah, like you're just easy to be around, and it's kind of the way I like to be. So you've always been a huge inspiration for me, but just getting to know you on a personal level has been so awesome, because seeing that's a great way to be successful is that I don't think you've ever said anything good about yourself. You just let anyone else say what they're going to say about you, and then you say, "Oh yeah, I'm Joe. You can just call me Joe." I don't know. I've always enjoyed that about you, and so it's been so exciting to have you here for this week. And
thank you.
And maybe you and I have a little project in the works we can talk about later at another point.
I'll be back.
So it's
I'll be back for episode number 32 or something.
32. Get the shirt ready, Laurin.
Get the shirt ready.
I hope sooner. I hope it's maybe like number 17. We gotta get this thing rolling.
Listen, there's no limit to what we're going to be doing, and Laurin and I are in full on grind hustle mode. Like we're both, we're kind of like you. We're looking at that next thing that we can do to kind of move forward in the next direction, whether it be education, business, I don't know what else. Yeah, like everything, like being a part of it. Like we made a conscious effort this year to be a lot more present at competitions, because in my opinion, there's a trend right now to be an online coach.
Right.
Not a coach. And so we're trying to be coaches because we actually enjoy what we're doing, especially now with technology. My gosh, email used to be the only platform. Now it's just so easy to have a video, to have audio, there's just so much more available. So it makes being a hands-on coach just, have you, because I know you're still working with a few clients here and there, have you changed the methods that you coach with over the last 10 years?
It's interesting, as you were just saying, being present at contests and so forth, that's probably, there's a lot in what you just said. And I would just say that it's probably why I'm so interested more in social psychology and that kind of life right now, or those parts of life right now, is because in a world that's, supposedly more connected, we're really more disconnected on several levels. And just learning those things, how to be human, what's my life journey all about, what do I want it to be, and how do I be better in other people's lives? Like, that's a really big interest in what I'm working on now. And so I've done very similar things. I am still coaching some people. It's a lot less now, because with more than 100 Diet Doc program owners, those are the people that I'm communicating with every day.
Right.
I'm helping them. I'm helping them build businesses. I'm helping them work with their clients when they have questions and issues. So yeah, it's instead of just hammering out an email, I'll say, hey, let's get on the phone.
Yeah.
And even more so, how about a video chat? Because I want to see that body language and make that connection. It makes a world of difference.
One of the things you brought up a few times throughout this discussion was like the psychology of things. And I remember a few years ago when you came to camp, you brought now Dr. Kori Propst with you. Talk a little bit about how you integrated her, because I think one of the areas that me and Laurin love is the psychology of coaching, because it's not just black and white numbers, do this, don't do that. There's so much involved, and I think Kori has kind of taken your approach to her career, and I mean now she's doing such great things with the Diet Doc.
Yeah, everybody loves Kori when they meet her.
For sure.
And she was a client of mine about 10 years ago. She contacted me and just for coaching, and I was able to help her win 3 pro cards in fit body, figure, bodybuilding. She won a couple pro shows, was always in the top 3 at the Pro World Championships. And she was just, she was a great client and a lot of fun, very smart. And there were times in my business where, being a planner, I'm always thinking about how can I make my business better for everybody involved, clients, everybody. So I'm anticipating I need to hire somebody. We're growing so fast. I need to do something. Is it going to be a support staff, a professional staff? And one of my things in business is to always look first at an income generating position. If I'm going to add somebody, can that position pay for itself? So I remember throwing this out there in social media saying, hey, I'm thinking about hiring kind of this person or this person or this person. Is there anybody out there that I know that kind of fits that bill? And I think within like 2 minutes, Kori emailed me and she said, you're hiring me.
Wow.
And I said, well, I said I might be filling some kind of position in the future. And she said, no, you're hiring me. And she was a counselor. She had a master's in counseling, and she had all of these things that we were going to be, that she wanted to do. But I actually said, okay, let's think this through. Let's talk about it. I flew her to Evansville so that we could actually sit down and chat about what that would look like. And she's a great person, and I thought this is exactly what we need. We need a psychology angle. And Laurin, I know it's what a lot of people who I think have a decent level of self-actualization. You do that anyway. Like when your clients are talking to you, you're not just doing nutrition, right?
No, everything is, that's the smallest part of it. Like, hey, we're going to tweak this, we'll change this number, we'll do that. It's not even half of it. Half of it is them telling me about their week and within all the questions that I've asked them, and then me kind of diagnosing in that way how to help them through whatever they're doing. Not diagnosing, that's probably wrong term, but you know what I mean, right? Like figuring out what's wrong, how to work through all that, and that really that's the coaching.
Right.
And without it, you're just a numbers person, and that's fine if that's what you're looking for. But that's definitely not going to work for everyone, and that's not going to work for like long lasting.
Right.
I think what you said was so interesting with hiring someone was that you should look for somebody who's revenue generating versus just like you're paying them to do something. Like that's so interesting, and I think I've heard you say that before, and it was just like, oh wow, that like really stuck with me. Instead of just like hire someone to like do something for me, like can they actually add to the team and like grow with everything?
Well, that can be when your time is freed up.
Right.
Like I have an administrative person now that I consider her highly generating revenue for me because it's enabled me to do more things. Take off some like tasks that aren't like required for me to do all the time. So, yeah, I'm always in your ear about things.
All of those matter. I mean, we're getting ready to hire a salesperson, then an admin person. So it's not all revenue generating. But at that time in our business, we needed that. I didn't need somebody to take out my trash. I didn't need somebody to do this or that. I needed this.
Yeah.
And so, she came on board, and we initially had her in charge of our entire general population nutrition. So just an immense job. I mean, we had an incredibly big community of local, general population clients, and she immediately did great stuff there. She was doing some counseling, and it wasn't until later that she got really involved in some of the contest type stuff.
Yeah.
As she was working on her PhD, we just got more and more into different roles, and she became a really strong face of the company because I'm as you know, behind the scenes, more introverted, and I'll write and I'll do that kind of stuff, but she's an attractive person, especially with females who just love that soft counselor side. And so I eventually invited her to be a partner in the company, and so now she's an equity holder and a partner, with me.
Yeah, and I mean, couldn't ask for a better person. She's just she's so easygoing and so modest, and yet just adds so much value. I refer people to her all the time when I hear any issues that I think will fit her skill set. I'm like, please email Kori@thedietdoc.com, and I get nothing but fantastic feedback every time that happens. So.
She's a great therapist because of those skills and because of that softness, but I'll say this kind of jokingly, but it's not joking.
Yeah.
Her first nickname in our company was the Badger. She will destroy you if she wants to. I mean, she is a great partner because she is a business partner who gets shit done. I have never seen somebody more disciplined and hardworking than her. So you really get the best of both worlds.
Didn't she have a reputation at some point for making everyone that came to her cry?
In a good way.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
I mean, she could definitely
like in a therapy way, like a therapeutic way.
Yeah, most people when you're within like 15 seconds of her, you're gonna start feeling some things you haven't been used to feeling.
Yeah.
She's just that kind of therapist.
Well, why don't we start to wrap it up?
Okay.
Let's talk a little bit about how people can reach out to you, whether it be in any capacity. I mean, maybe they're
that
interested.
Instagram handle.
Oh, I mean, your post count went way up today.
You gonna tell the story? This is not fun for me.
So Joe's been here all weekend, and whenever you're doing stuff on the gram, you tag people, and so I kept tagging Joe, and then we were talking today, and I realized, and he said, no, I don't know that I've ever posted, and I looked on his page, and sure enough, it said no post yet.
0. Goose egg.
Fake account.
So
alert.
fake account.
It's not a fake account. I just started it, and I never did anything.
You probably don't know this because you're not on the gram, but it's a very common trend for companies to build hundreds of thousands of fake accounts, then sell them to you to build your following. So you can say, oh yeah, I'll buy 10,000 followers, and you get all these followers, but you go to their pages, no post.
Right.
They just follow
or they're like trolls, and they have they follow 1 million people, and they have no followers, and there's no picture.
So how do I fix this problem?
You start posting.
I need to post some stuff on Instagram?
Yeah.
Yes.
Your name is, I'm just going to say, it's going to be difficult for people to figure out your Instagram handle without you spelling it. So let's just spell it.
What is my Instagram address, by the way? Do you know it?
It's at Joe Klemczewski.
At Joe Klemczewski, okay. Why is that funny?
It's just fun. My address. your Instagram address.
I'm on the I'm on the computer box. The Google machine.
I know, we should probably maybe change that so it's easier.
People are going to think I'm like 80 years old. Back in my day.
Honestly, if you hear all these accomplishments, you would expect
you think that you're way
to be older than you are. I mean, I'm sure that's a common thing when people meet you. They go, oh, you're Dr. Joe?
We're close to the same age, Paul.
That's what I'm saying. You make me feel very, very small.
So Dr. Joe is going to start posting on Instagram.
Yes,
we're going to force him.
It's at Joe Klemczewski. Is that right? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And Klemczewski is KLEMCZEWSKI. Maybe we should just change that. Should I change my
I feel like
Instagram?
we should change that.
It's going to be hard at this point because of all the accounts on there. You're not going to get, as we know, the Diet Doc. I think you should get that one, but
we have that, I think.
No.
Our company doesn't have that one?
No, remember you and I had a discussion about how you're going to get it back the other day? I don't want to talk about it on the podcast here, but maybe something like like Dr. Joe at Dr. Joe K. That'd be an easy one. At Dr. Joe K might be available, something like that. But I think
we'll help you out.
You have so much content, and I think one of the great things about Instagram, what I like to use it for, is like long form content. You can just take blurbs from your writings and just post them up there.
And then you can have the little link that they can go read, because before you were like, oh, I have all these articles, and Paul was like, well, where are they? Like, we don't know. So
and now you can link. You can have a web link on
your
profile page. Click on it.
Maybe we need to teach Kori to do that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
Do some psychology and do some social media.
Oh, that stuff is gold.
I mean,
Dr.
honestly,
Harden, who was here, that's the kind of stuff. If you don't go on his Instagram page, you would never know it. But that's what he puts out. It's like real life stuff that you can use in day-to-day life.
Videos are a minute, so it's digestible stuff. And fitness, I think, is probably the biggest on Instagram, right? I mean, fitness is Instagram, right? Like Facebook, there's a lot of people on there, but I would say it's less fitness oriented because Instagram is so visual. Yeah. So, but now
this is tough for me because I think it was you, Laurin, who said you read a book or somebody did where one entire chapter is titled "There are people who tweet and people who work." Is that you?
No, that was Doris. But we were all together.
Okay. And so yeah, I mean, obviously I'm that guy who works. I'm not the guy who tweets. Right. Do I have a Twitter account too?
So
do I figure that one out?
That I don't know. I don't tweet. That's just for people that want to argue, I feel.
Okay. All right. So I'll leave that one aside. But so I'm afraid I'm gonna get in this game and then my actual work.
Well, so you're talking about hiring positions that earn revenue. I mean, big companies now have social media people that do like videography, posting on different platforms. You know.
But then it's not authentic because it's not really you.
I know. That's where.
Well, as long as you don't present that it's not you. So as long as you're saying you're putting out content and not saying, hey, today I was walking down the street and I had a thought. No, you're just putting out content.
Here's Joe on social media trying to be really genuine and connecting and all that, and it's really, just my assistant who's doing it for me so that I can just appear that way.
Listen, I just want people to know more about you. I just feel like you've done so much and seen so much, and like people. Yeah, and maybe you don't want that, but I'm going to make it happen if I can. Just because I don't know, I feel like your presence in this fitness industry is so important.
All right. Well, the project you were talking about that you and I might be working on,
yes,
I think that'll bring some collaboration into the mix, and we'll do some.
I actually had two in mind, but I won't mention either of them now. We'll talk about those going forward. But
so many secrets on this podcast.
I may have to move to Florida. Is what it sounds like to me.
I mean, I'm sure you could get a degree from USF. I'm sure there's one you don't have yet.
We know a guy.
Yeah. You can come be a teacher here at the USF Exercise Science. Well, I think that's going to be it for today. Is there anything that you want to talk about or that you have coming up that you feel would be relevant for the purposes of the listeners?
Just my amazing new Instagram account.
Yeah.
I don't know what it's going to be yet, but that's going to happen. Maybe
we will let you guys know.
Yeah. We'll be sure to make sure he's putting something on there. I'll be like, hey Joe, I just went on your page. 2 posts this month. All right, guys. Well, that's going to be it for me. Anything else from you, Laurin?
No. I don't like to close it out. So
Laurin,
thank you.
Terrible goodbyes.
Terrible goodbyes. So thank you so much for coming on. This was awesome.
Thank you.
And we always learn so much from you. Just
I
having
feel like
lunch conversations.
We skimmed over so much in a short period of time. Definitely Joe's going to be back for episode 17, 37, 96, multiple episodes.
We're going to pick some good numbers like the lottery.
Yeah, and then basically we're just going to abuse all of your time when you come here so that you have less chance to get more degrees.
I won't be able to post as much on Instagram.
All right, guys, that's going to be it for today for episode 9 for Redefine Healthy Radio. We've got some more episodes coming up in the near future. We're going to try to get some cool people on here that were here for the camp. And so look out for those, and we'll talk to you soon. All right, bye.